48-hour art check, round 78. All right, we are back from our turkey hiatus.
I know, and I think we're turkey hungover, honestly.
Oh man, yeah. There's probably more tiredness than tryptophan can explain, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, active holidays, busy holidays. Let's do our check and see how we did amongst all the family gatherings and whatnot.
Okay, you want to start us off, Josh?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. What did you get done in the last 48 hours?
Okay, so I finished the page that you guys have been seeing worked on thus far, so you can check that out at quarterlystories.com. And then I thumbnailed the next page, and I worked out the rough lettering and layout for the next page. So tonight I'm going to basically do thumbnails, and that's pretty much it.
Cool.
But yeah, I actually accomplished a little over what I was expecting, which is kind of surprising. So
that's awesome. My buttons have stopped working. So how about you, Scott?
Okay, let me get my notes here. All right, so let's see. So Sunday, besides doing just a ton of Christmas decorating, I worked on some freelance. I filmed and edited 2 videos, one for my YouTube channel and one for my newsletter. I wrote a cover letter for a job app that I sent out. And then today I finished up some stuff for my newsletter and sent out my newsletter. This is like my first newsletter, actually. I posted those videos, answered comments, all that stuff. I've been working on a video ad for a Cyber Week promotion. And I'm also illustrating a caricature for advertising the comic starter kit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
nice.
Hey, my buttons are back. Well, that's cool. I tell you what, if people aren't jumping on that comic starter kit, they're crazy, because giving it away for free is awesome. So, but
yeah, it's really helping build that mailing list. It's I'm really happy with the results so far. It's like throughout the day I just bing bing bing, and I keep getting these alerts that somebody joined. It says at some point I might have to turn it off, but right now I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. As for me, I have a really good testament to 48-hour art check. I got nothing done, and last night I was like, hey, I have to get something done, because I'm gonna be meeting tomorrow. So I got this done. That's what I got done, is I just did a little illustration just to kind of wet my whistle. I've been kind of struggling a little bit with that, but so I did this. But I mean, we were going down to Zion and Bryce and did a bunch of hiking and kind of went all over the place. And so good holiday, good family time, not great art time. So I got one small, 4-hour illustration done in a week. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm imagining it's going to be rough for at least another month. There's just so much stuff going on, but
yeah. So how about challenges, Josh? What were your challenges?
Well, I'm sure my challenges will be in common with a lot of us, but most of it's just, with the holidays and everything, just really wanting to spend time with family and make sure to get in all that time with my son that I don't really get to have during the regular work week. So that was kind of a challenge, and finding windows to kind of get art done. But what was weird was the fact that I feel like I got a lot more accomplished, but I think it might have been because I had little windows throughout the day, as opposed to the one kind of window I usually have, which is at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And so that, it kind of worked itself out. The challenge worked itself out a bit. And then I didn't mention this, but I did do like a little drawing challenge with Dan Eckes, which will be on his channel at some point soon, and that was super fun too. But it occupied a lot of my Saturday or Sunday as well, and so it was like a fun challenge, but it was definitely a challenge regardless, because that's still art time that didn't go towards the comic,
Right.
but it was still good, and I'll link to it and share it with you guys. It's a really fun conversation. I like Dan; he's a good dude.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
His channel's pretty awesome. I mean, he gets some amazing people on there, and he's growing, so that's really cool. Scott in the chat has shared the video, which is always awesome. You rock.
Yes,
Go check out Scott's channel. I'd rather be drawing. Thanks for sharing that. How about you, Scott? Other Scott Circland.
Okay, yeah. So my challenges were I seemed like I wasted a lot of time today working on this video because I'm trying to do like a video in a square format, and I edit all my stuff in Cyberlink Power Director, which is I've been using it because it's very user friendly. I transitioned from Windows Movie Maker to this because it's more robust, but it's also very user friendly. But so I found a tutorial on how to do it. Went through the whole thing, did my video. And it was putting these black bars on the side, and it wasn't coming out in a square format. So I went back to the video and started reading the comments, and one of the people said, "Yeah, I'm doing everything you said, but it's not square." And then the guy responded back and said, "Yeah, I got these instructions from somebody else. I guess it doesn't really work."
Oh,
so the whole video was just I went in and I was able to take that video because I kind of edited it so the stuff on the side is just kind of could go away if it needed to. So I found how to do it in Premiere, which I've never used Premiere, and I don't think I've ever opened it. But I sort of followed the instruction, pasted the existing video in there, and I was able to export it, and it works. So now the challenge is just run this ad. And I ran a Black Friday ad, and yeah, I was pretty disappointed. Well, the weird thing is, it's like, so first I did it as a post on Instagram, this Black Friday thing. I got 16 likes on it. Versus the previous video had 116 likes. So
yeah.
If you're trying to advertise, people do not want to engage with it. It just seems like because they see it as an ad. So I've got to figure out.
You also might be having a signal to noise ratio issue.
That could be
because there's a term called shared voice in advertising, where you're, like you are sharing space with other advertisers. And on like Black Friday, it's super crowded, and so it could have just been advertising overload.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I wanted to get this ad up because today's Cyber Monday, but I'm just running a whole week long thing. So hopefully I'll post it tomorrow. But there's also this other thing is that like I clicked on it and it's got like I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. But there's like some of the ads I see on Instagram say shop now, and then some say like learn more. I don't know if that's just something you change, but like on mine, if you clicked on it, it would ask like, I'm interested, please tell me more. I had like these canned things, like one of them said, do you offer products and services? And I don't know what that is. I just wanted to go to my website. And I know if you run an ad, I know normally unless you have a big enough audience, you can't do that. But if you run an ad, it's my understanding that you can do that. So I don't know. I want to run another ad, but I want it to link to my website. I don't want it to come up with some because people were clicking on that, and I think it was just like an accident. Like because I just kind of got weird emails or weird messages saying, "Do you sell products and services?" It's just weird. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's strange.
So yeah, I know this whole Facebook and Instagram thing is sort of there's a big like learning curve to it, but. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't figured it out, but I don't know. For me, I've got some challenges that I don't want to go into live on the air. Basically that there's weird insurance stuff. I'll say that much. So that's super stressful. And then just like time consuming stuff. Like I just drove 16 hours round trip, spent a few days away from home in a cabin, just a bunch of stuff like that. That just makes it difficult to get stuff done. Like sharing space with, I don't even know how many nieces and nephews I have now, but probably like 15 to 20 like kids under 10. You know, and so it's just kind of, it was fun, but it just I just didn't get anything done. So that was my main challenge. How about plans, Josh? What are you planning on doing?
All right. So I am planning on tonight penciling the first 3 rough panels. The first panel isn't all that complicated like the first 3. Because it's going to be mostly zip lines, like for most of the panel, to kind of create this sense of like movement in a run. And so it should be feasible. So I'm hoping to do that tonight, and then I'm hoping to get that middle panel worked on and the rough pencils for that probably by the next art check. So, which is kind of fun because it's an actual action sequence, which I don't actually get to do a lot with this comic.
Yeah.
And so it should be kind of fun to kind of exercise those muscles. Like the last page was really fun to finish because I got to draw all this like angry, like, splattered anger stuff that you don't get to do a lot in kind of the type of comic I'm doing. And so it's kind of fun. It's a change of pace, and I'm looking forward to it. But that's my plan.
That's awesome. How about you, Scott? What are you going to do in the next couple days?
Yeah, so I have a few different things on my to-do list. I kind of have to prioritize what I want to do, but I completed 2 of my big goals, which was the comic starter kit and also getting my store all up and ready. So the next big thing is I want to do another one of these kind of comic kits, but this one's going to be like twice as big, and it'll be like a paid version. There's a lot of stuff to do on that one. Also, I want to build sort of a set, something kind of a removable set that I can put up here. This is kind of where I do a lot of my work, so that I can do some more vlogging and stuff up here with the Cintiq and everything like that. So kind of do some stuff to make it sort of look like the underground lair. So that's one of the other things I have to do. And then just finish updating my brand on all my platform. I put up a new header on YouTube. I may change some of it. I'm still tweaking some stuff, but just before the end of the year, I want to have all my newer branding basically reflect what the website looks like on all the different platforms. So those are the things I've got to do. I got to figure out what's priority out of those.
Cool. And I have kind of an interesting thing. I've been in a little bit of a slump after finishing this project. So my plans are, I don't have time to do 100 days of something, but I'm going to revisit my 100 days of animation. And starting tonight, I am going to do 20 days of animation where I'm going to spend an hour every day. My plan being that I will take an animation completely through the process, from thumbnail sketches to storyboards to animatic to animation to finish. And I want to do that several times. I will be doing, I'm going to redo the kind of title sequences for Illo Talk which is my YouTube channel, because I want to be able to do that a little bit smoother. I feel like the music I'm using right now is too long, and I don't have any title graphics that'll come up. And since one of the things I do is animation, having those be still has always kind of bothered me. So in the next 20 days, I will have some pretty cool animated title graphics for my channel. That's kind of my plan.
That's cool. Are you going to be making videos out of all this, or are you doing that?
Yeah. So, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing it, is I've had a lot of people ask what my animation process is. And so what I'll be doing is I'm going to go through the first time I did 100 days of animation. I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning the software, doing things out of order. I was finishing things before I had storyboarded them, and it was weird, right? And so now that I've got my feet underneath me, I think I have a pretty clear process, and not surprisingly, it lines up with everybody else's basic animation process. And so I will be doing kind of cataloging that. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do a video every day, or if I'm going to do a video every major milestone. I'm kind of thinking every day though, and then I'll just explain like this is what I'm working on. Because what I really want to do is at the end of that, I'd like to have a video that talks about storyboarding, a video that talks about animatics, a video that talks about roughs, and a video that talks about finished. So that you could watch like 4 videos in a row and get a really good idea of like the process of building an animation from start to finish. I think that would be pretty valuable. So that's kind of my goal, is to have some finished animation and then to have like a set of videos that I can kind of use as like a playlist to help people understand how to do it. Because I have like the tutorial side of things, like here's how to do stuff in After Effects, right? And like I've got that down, and I've got all the assets, and if you guys want to see those, you can always go to corykerr.com/tools, and I give all those assets away for free. I should give them away in exchange for an email sign up, but anyway, you can just go get them, and then if you want to learn how to do that, if you already know Adobe Illustrator, I've got that, but I don't have like the process of how to plan and execute an animation independent of software, and so that's kind of what this is. So videos, whether they be daily or milestone, I will be doing videos. I'm not sure which one though.
It's exciting. I think it'll be cool too. For those of you who aren't familiar, like Cory is super talented at animation and really knowledgeable with this like method he uses in After Effects. So I think the more he shares of that, like the better it'll be. And actually, I was going to mention we should discuss this, but I think that secret project we might be able to share at some point.
Yeah,
might as well.
Yeah, we could for sure. And that would be an interesting episode to go through the process that we went through. I'd love to talk through the process and show the assets and show like here's the animatic that I did, and then here's the illustrations that you did, and you could talk about how you did those and why you did it the specific way, and then I could talk about how they moved, and because there was a 2-day period where we just dedicated like a 48 hours to this, because we worked on it for a week and a half.
Yeah.
But there was 2 days at the end where you were kind of on call, and I was like firing stuff, and then I'd be like, I need this, and then you would like draw it, and I would go back to make stuff, and then it would magically show up. That was like a fun, super stressful, but fun, like, I don't know. That might be a good topic to hit at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So by secret project, do you mean what was a secret but now everyone knows is the intro? Is that what you're talking about, or is this something else?
No, we did something as a pitch for.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I forgot about
we
that.
did something as a pitch for a documentary that.
That's right.
I think ended up not getting used, and so we retain all the rights to that, and can show it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think
it's a bummer that it didn't get used, but
I think even the audio we used is in the public domain, so I think we should be good.
Yeah.
Cool. So
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do the podcast intro now. So for those of you that are watching live that aren't familiar with this, we do a podcast version of the chat portion of these videos. And if you'd like to be included in that podcast, you can jump into the chat and we'll read comments and stuff. But to save time, I do the intro so that I can just like cut and I don't have to go re-record things, everything. So, and it's been a week. So let me see if I can remember what I'm saying here. I think I'm good. Okay, here we go. 48-hour art check, best of podcast. We go live on YouTube Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. California time, and we rip the best conversations from those videos and put them here on this podcast, and that's what you're listening to now. You can always go to corykerr.com/48hr to check out more. And today we have myself, Cory Kerr, Joshua Kimball, and Scott Cirkland, and we are going to discuss mindset and how mindset affects art. So what I was thinking is I am reading Carol Dweck's book called Mindset, and I think there's a couple different ways to approach this, but she was looking at students and how students learn. And she did this big study with a bunch of graduate students, and they started tracking the types of things that students thought about their abilities And they noticed that really successful students had a group of thoughts that were all very similar, and really unsuccessful students had a group of thoughts that were all very similar. They named those mindsets, and the one mindset is considered to be a growth mindset, and the other mindset is considered to be a fixed mindset. And the main difference is the internal belief of attributes and characteristics being either fixed or changeable. And so somebody with a fixed mindset believes that there are people that are creative and there are people that are not creative. They believe that there are people that are musical and there are people that are not musical. There are people that are intelligent and there are other people that are not intelligent. Somebody with a growth mindset believes that a snapshot in time of somebody's ability is not indicative of their possibility. And so if you were to take the SAT or the ACT or an IQ test, that would be a snapshot of that person's life, but not an indication of their entire IQ or their entire intelligence. And so ultimately what that means is that failures are obstacles, not a fixed position. A failure is an action, not an attribute. A success is something that has happened in the progress of being able to become something, but it's not something that defines you. And this I found really interesting because I think that imposter syndrome happens in my mind when I'm more in a fixed mindset, because I'm worried about being discovered as an imposter. I'm worried about failing. I'm worried about being found out. I'm worried about the fact that I'm kind of faking it until I make it. Whereas in a growth mindset, I recognize that my abilities as an artist, my abilities as a speaker, my abilities as a teacher, my abilities as a husband and a father, and whatever roles I'm playing are not fixed. They are things that I can control. And I do believe that. But in those times when I don't feel it, I think that's when I slip into kind of an imposter syndrome mindset. And I have proven over the years with students that you can teach people who do not consider themselves to be creative to do and become creative, to do creative things, to create and to be creative. And it's a fascinating concept that when this penny drops, that you can kind of get this, there's that idea that people are born an artist or they're born a musician or they're born a whatever. That talent comes into play more than effort. And if you go with a growth mindset, this allows you to become anything that you want. And so anything that you're interested in becoming with enough time and effort that is focused in the right direction, you can increase whatever skills and abilities and knowledge that you want. And that's a growth mindset. Whereas a fixed mindset, you either are that thing or you are not that thing forever. I was just curious on what you guys thought about kind of those two dichotomies. This is really interesting. She's not talking about art or creativity or writing, but I think there's a lot of applicable things that we could draw from those.
Yeah, I mean, like to me, one thing that comes to mind just being an art director and dealing with like managing different creatives and just managing people in general. If you read any book on kind of management, like one of the most frustrating things a manager will have to deal with and frequently does have to deal with is someone who doesn't own or correct or learn from their errors. And so one of the most frustrating things as a creative director is a fixed mindset in that sense, because a person with a growth mindset is going to see like an error or a piece of art that they make for a deadline that needs revision as something in flux. It's something in building, like they themselves are something that's being built, not something that's completed. And it's a lot easier to work with a person who is building rather than a person who feels like they're built. And so like for a perfect example is like the kind of receptivity you get from an artist, or reception. I don't even think receptivity is a word.
It is now. We've coined it.
Yeah, receptivity.
Hashtag receptivity, TM.
Yeah, the kind of reception you get from like a student or an employee or even a person above you in a professional setting where they're open to making error and learning from errors and correcting and kind of fixing and kind of collaborating and making and building something. That's like, if you give any art director on the planet that kind of person, like, they're going to have an easy time. And not just that, they're going to have a much more creative, fulfilling time, and it's going to go both ways for those people. But if you have someone who's like, I'm a creative, I'm a designer, I made it perfect, period. That's like a wall that's really hard to break through, and so just from my own experience, like teaching and art directing, I can say, like, the fixed mindset is a real. It's something I've become more aware of in myself from observing how stifling and creatively blockading it is as a personality trait to have like a fixed mindset. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like when you see the wheels of creativity, this whole collaboration kind of working, or you have like a young student and you see them starting to click and they're getting anatomy and they're starting to push themselves and get a little frustrated because it's like learning new things and stuff. When that wall comes and just stops the whole thing, it's like a spoke in the tire, a spoke in the wheel. It really feels like that. It feels like a spoke in the wheel, like you just crashed, because it's hard to move the immovable. And I think a fixed mindset is exactly that. It's immovable. So then looking at myself, I have to catch myself because I fluctuate from a fixed to a what was the other mind? A growth mindset, I guess.
Yeah.
I fluctuate between the two. And I often have to catch myself when I'm confronting something with a fixed mindset. Excuse me. But like a perfect example of that for myself would be like when like if I hear criticism of my art, or if I hear criticism of something I'm doing, or hear a suggestion that could make it better, or hear a criticism of my management, because there's usually feedback, like when you're managing people, like they're going to criticize the way you're doing it. And
right.
The fixed mindset wants to be like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm the manager, like that,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Whereas like the growth mindset is kind of wanting that feedback and wanting to learn from it and wanting to see it as an opportunity to, like, if I can improve myself like 5%, I've won,
Yeah.
So
well,
like,
and that's a really interesting concept with the fixed and the growth mindset that she brings up in the book, is how you take critique. Because somebody who has a fixed mindset, they believe that they are those attributes, that they are immovable, they're a fixed part of their personality, a part of their being. And so if I had a fixed mindset and you critiqued my artwork, I would feel like it was a personal attack. Whereas somebody with a growth mindset sees that our skills and our abilities and our traits are something that are outside of us and something that we can improve and change, and there's something that we can get better at, but they're not at the core of who I am. If I'm feeling and thinking in a growth mindset, and you were to come in and say, hey, here are some things that you could do to improve this piece, it would be you and I looking at this piece together, other than me, that I can do better in the future. There's room for growth. Whereas in a fixed mindset, that's a final declaration. You have attacked my being. There's nothing that I can do about that, because I believe deep in my core that I either am something or am not something. In the chat, Spencer George has a really interesting comment that brings something up as well. He said, personal experience, I started out as a STEM student for 2 years before I dove feet first into art. I never considered myself an artist up until that point, and I have a problem with the idea that I had some inherent talent that I discovered. I like to think that I built my skills outside of some initial talent. And so there's kind of this interesting dichotomy, or interesting comparison between talent and natural ability, which I do believe that exists, and the ability to work and improve that type of thing. And I think there are people that are born with talent in specific areas. There are people that are blessed with some degree of ability. But I actually feel like that doesn't get you very far. Take somebody who's super talented that doesn't work, and they're never going to get better, and they're kind of useless. Whereas somebody who has very little talent but works super hard, they're going to pass that person. You get the combination of that where you get a little bit of talent, a little bit of natural ability, and you couple that with some effort and some work and some direction, and you've kind of got a winning combination. What do you think, Scott, on this whole thing? Fixed versus growth, talent versus work?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely a firm believer in the growth mindset, but yeah, I mean, I was going to pretty much kind of say what Spencer talked about, because I always get a little frustrated when people say, "Oh, you're so talented," because it's, you know, I know they have the best of intentions when they say that, but to me it's like, well, yeah, but I kind of worked really hard to get where I am. But like you said, I do agree that there is some inherent ability, and also I think it has a lot to do with your environment. Are you in a place that encourages, you know, creativity and that type of thing? That can, I mean, I was lucky enough to be born in a family where my parents really encouraged me to pursue my creative stuff, you know. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But yeah, I mean, I just something about the notion of that it's all just talent. So I like to think that I'm so towards the growth mindset, but maybe that's only with art, because I've been in a place like we had a block party a little while ago, and everyone like broke out their guitars, and they had like a little drum box and stuff, and people were singing and doing all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I have zero musical ability, but that's probably because I haven't really, as much as, you know, when I was a kid, like everyone, I wanted to be a rock star, but, you know, I took maybe like one guitar lessons, and it was difficult, so I gave up. So, but the thing is, I must not have wanted it enough. If I wanted it more, I think I could have pursued it. But for whatever reason, I don't. And I think that's the case. I think some people, whether it's art or whatever, I think maybe they don't want to do it as much as they think they do. Because you really do need to put, I mean, that's the thing. You got to put in so much time and some of it has to do with art too. For me, I mean, sometimes when I look at like a really, really good like fantasy illustrator, because that's like in an area that I really, you know, I'm not skilled at all. It's at one point a while back, I was doing, I had this promotion that I was doing, and I just wanted to show all these different styles that I could do. This is back when I was doing more character design. And so I had all the, you know, the kind of the cutesy stuff. And then I showed a bunch of different styles, and I wanted to throw in something that was a little more like fantasy. And I am not a painter, you know? So, and I look back at it now, it sticks out so much from everything else, because it's something that I didn't pursue enough to kind of understand. And, you know, but it's something that I admire and everything. And I sometimes I think about it. I think like, well, if I really put in the time, I'm sure I could get to a level like that. But then I ask myself, am I willing to put in that time? Because what I'm kind of doing now kind of works for me. So that's part of it too. So it's just sometimes it's a matter of choices. Like, what do you choose to spend your time on to kind of build your skills or talents or whatever you want to call them.
So there's definitely an opportunity cost with those things for sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I wonder sometimes, and I just have one quick comment because I'm interested in what Josh is saying. I wonder sometimes if talent actually exists, or because I've heard the theory that talent isn't real, but there's just some people are imbued with an interest in a specific thing that allows them to fight through the initial being incompetent part of learning. And so you say that, oh, they're very artistically talented or they're very musically talented. I'm not sure that that's true. they might have been given an interest in music enough to fight through the part where they sucked at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Josh?
Well, okay, so the one outlier with this that I think kind of shows that there is a little bit of an element of talent is like so my father, before kind of going into graphic design and like architecture and a bunch of weird other stuff, because he was like a prolific guy. So he went into a lot of things and worked really hard and got a lot of degrees and like succeeded at a lot of stuff. But his initial dream was to be a jet pilot. And he had this moment where he got in a flight simulator, and they basically simulate like I forget the specifics of it, but what they found out from like him doing these tests for it was that like once he reached a certain altitude, his nose would bleed. And they were like, "Oh, you can't fly." Like that was it. Because like at the end of the day, like the physics of his body, like his genetics wouldn't let him fly jet airplanes, you know? Like, so it's like, no matter how hard he worked, if you get a nosebleed in a jet going hundreds of miles an hour, your vision's gone and you're going to die. Like,
yeah.
So there's like, there are a few things, similarly, like, you know, like my son, man, you know, I'm going to encourage him to follow his dreams and stuff. But if he's dreaming of being a pro basketball player, I know his genes. Like, I sincerely doubt that's going to happen. Because he's already cursed by his height. You know what I mean?
And yet you do have, you know, Muggsy Bogues and, you know, people who are 5'3" that can dunk, you know. Because there's an interesting thing in this book, Mindset. She talks about Christopher Reeve, who played Superman, broke his back, severed his spinal column, and the doctors said, well, that's it. You're never gonna be able to do anything again because there's no coming back from this. And he said, I refuse to accept that. He started this very experimental electrolysis regimen where he was reteaching himself how to move. And after years of doing this and working hard at it hours every day, he actually regained some minor movement in his extremities that the doctors said were impossible. And so because he said, I refuse to have a fixed mindset, you know, now that took years and we have a limited lifespan, and there definitely are, you know, existentialism calls it facticity. You know, there definitely are facts in our life, you know, that will limit us. But I wonder sometimes if we extend that truth beyond its usefulness. You know, if I say, well, you know, I was born in this neighborhood, so I'm never going to become anything. And then you look at people like Obama, you know, or, you know, whatever. And you have situations where we use that. So actually the last part of this that I was super interested to talk to you guys about, is so there is this thing, right? There's been studies done where there's these two mindsets. I'm interested, what do you do with that information? How might we, as people trying to be artists and illustrators and writers and animators, creatives, how might we apply this in our life? Kind of a rubber meets the road situation. I'll start while you guys are thinking of that, since I'm kind of springing a question on you. One thing that I think is helpful is you pay attention to your self-talk. Your self-talk is the type of thoughts that you are saying in your mind about yourself. And anything that comes across as fixed, or anything that comes across as an excuse to not work on something that you want to get better at, you need to tag and bag that as a fixed mindset and promote the growth mindset. So whenever you catch yourself saying, well, I can't do that because, or that's just the way I am, you need to recognize huge red flags should go up and alarm siren should go off in your head and say, oh, I'm catching myself in a fixed mindset. Because the other thing that they found in this study, this series of studies that they've done, is that the growth mindset, kind of ironically, can be taught. And so it's a lot of the way that you think is how you're raised. Kind of like Scott was saying, if you're raised in a creative environment, then you're more apt to be creative. If you're raised, in an analytical environment, you're less apt to be creative. But they found that if you learn certain practices that help you switch to a growth mindset, that you can deprogram your childhood and reprogram your adulthood to be able to teach yourself to think this way, that will allow you to kind of do anything you want within genetic and physical limitation. So that would be one, is self-talk.
Yeah. So let me try to tell a story, and I don't know how much I want to go into it because it deals with like my divorce and marriage and stuff. So when I was going through my divorce, I ended up going to a therapist and everything just to sort everything out. And because in my marriage, it was there were certain tasks that each one of us did. My ex-wife, one of her big things was that she kind of took care of like the finances and stuff like that. And it seemed like, and maybe this is just me and my perspective, but it seemed like I did pretty much everything else, all the cleaning, all the, and we kind of shared cooking and stuff like that. But anyway, so, and anytime I would bring that up, because there'd be like, it was like I had this joke where, the first time I vacuumed was the last time she ever vacuumed. Because once she realized I could do something, then she didn't need to do it anymore. So, but anytime I would bring something like that up, she was like, well, you try to pay the bill. And this was just kind of conditioning me that this was so difficult to take care of the finances and pay the bills that like I would never be able to do it. So, so again, I was kind of going with the therapist and everything. And the therapist gave me this diagnosis that I was codependent. And I just kind of took that at face value that, oh yeah, I must be, because I always depended on my wife to, take care of finances and stuff like that. The other thing I remember, she also said something about that. Yeah. I mean, you're definitely codependent. And I would hazard to say that within a year, you're going to be married again to somebody. And I'm like, oh, okay, really? And it turned out that I'm probably, and in learning about myself and everything, because I was in my marriage. I was, this was, we were together for like over 20 years. But so again, I was just kind of conditioned to believe these certain things. And I came to find out that I'm probably the furthest thing from being codependent. Like right now, the relationship I have right now that's what I love so much about it, is we kind of have our own thing. We do our own thing. And then we get together and we hang out and all that, but we're both very independent people. Yeah. And the thing is, when I first realized that, when I first had to, take care of my own finances, I'm like, this is easy. Balancing a checkbook is like the easiest thing there is. What was she complaining about? So, but it can be applied to anything, whether it's art or whatever. If you condition yourself to believe a certain thing, it's really hard to change that. But you may realize that what you think you are, what you think you can accomplish is the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah. I 100% second that. I want to just touch on one thing in the chats. Auntie Hakasari, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, said, hey guys, long-time lurker, first-time commenting. Joshua, do you have an estimation of when quarterly stories will be finished? And I'm estimating that the art will be done by May for the first book. I can't estimate when the whole series will be done, but the first book should be completed, at least art-wise, by May. That doesn't mean book design or anything like that, so that'll be a much longer haul. But yeah, on the note of this, like, to me, I think for myself, something I consciously try to do is I enjoy being a skeptic. And I think the wrong approach for me, from like the idea of these two modes of thinking, would be to kind of like buy into The Secret and drop all rational thinking. Like that to me, I think is to me, I think that's a dangerous area. I've known a lot of people who really bought into like the idea of The Secret and ended up very broke and in a lot of pain from that, from the idea of The Secret, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's like this thing that was trendy quite a few years ago where it was like, if you just think it and you just want it and you think about it all the time and you believe it, it's going to happen.
The universe,
the universe if you're really curious about that, I was going to say, if you're really curious about that, I probably got a DVD of it that some girlfriend gave to me, and I was like, yeah, this is garbage.
Yeah. So, funny story. I almost didn't marry my wife because she was into The Secret for a very short period of time, and that was such a huge turnoff to me because I think it's such a giant pile of crap that I was like, I don't know. And then it was just, she hadn't looked into it enough.
The only thing I would say, and I don't think this has anything to do with The Secret being effective, but I think if you do put positive things out, you're probably going to get positive things back. Just because that's,
yeah.
But well, I don't think that has.
I believe that. I believe that, and that is in every major culture and religion.
Yes.
They have this idea of karma, of the law of the harvest, of that type of thing. I do believe that it's true that the type of thoughts that you have and the type of behaviors and speech that you choose to do and use have a massive effect in your surroundings and the way that things kind of come back to you. I think the problem is when you take anything into an extreme situation, it removes other variables that are in effect. And so The Secret is a problem because and I agree with you completely, Josh, if you were to take this whole mindset thing and say, oh, cool, all I have to do is think a specific way and then I'm done. I'm going to quit my job tomorrow and whatever. Well, the problem is that work and effort, which is like part of this world, like being on this earth, there are specific physical rules. And some of those rules are that things that are worth something take time. That's just something that seems to be within this realm. If I just tomorrow say, great, I'm going to become a famous, children's book illustrator. Well, I'm not there yet. And so my rent or my mortgage is going to come due. I'm going to need to buy groceries at some point in time. Like there are literal physical realities that come into play. And so taking something like this to an extreme, and expecting immediacy rather than logically saying, oh, this is part of a process that will take time and is part of this journey that I'm on. It's super dangerous. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, no, and so why I bring that up is because like inherently I'm a skeptic, and at heart, like I do have a real kind of I don't know. It's actually a slightly negative viewpoint of the world, and this is something I'm kind of aware of about myself. But what's interesting is the older and the further I've gotten with art, the more I've started really adopting principles of like positivity, and by positivity I mean like kind of what was being brought up, like the idea of like putting in like being a nice person in general, like be nice to people, and that gets you further. And you shouldn't be nice to people to get further. But the weird thing is, if you kind of relax in a social situation where everybody's stressed, it creates relaxation. It's this weird thing of like what you put out does kind of have an effect on a room. And going one step further, I think that there's some value to the ideas of The Secret, not the whole thing, but some of it, like the idea of visualizing, and when you're visualizing, not limiting your vision, being a little ambitious with it. So like with my book, if someone asks me what I think is going to happen with my book, I'll tell them the very real, very practical thing that's going to happen with it. I mean, for one thing, it's going to get finished. So I've visualized that far. For another, it's going to get published, whether it's published by me or by someone else, right? But beyond that, I don't often share like the kind of vision I have for it, which goes far beyond anything I would share like publicly.
Yeah.
Because it's ridiculous. Like, I really do plan to or visualize trying to take it very far, a lot further than I think is practical. And so I think that's important, because I think part of what got me into illustration was like this blind ambition and kind of cockiness that is really hard to replicate. Like when you're fresh out of school and you're just getting your first paid gigs, and the idea of even being paid to do art is like this exciting new thing. You know, and prior to that, like working crappy jobs where somebody's like, hey, you draw something, and you're excited about it. Whereas now at a job, if somebody asks me to draw something for fun, I'm like, are you kidding me? No, like, no, I don't want to draw this thing for you. But at the time it was like, oh, cool, I'm getting paid by the hour and somebody's going to let me draw for 20 minutes. Cool. You know?
Yeah.
There's something to be said for like this weird kind of cocky, naive over ambition that would make you kind of approach clients you have no business approaching, or shoot for things that are much further than you probably should be shooting for. And yet for some reason, a lot of that stuff really, you know, a lot of that stuff led to major failures early on, but for some reason that blind kind of cockiness and kind of stubbornness and insistence on getting in allowed me to get in this thing of like making this my living.
Yeah.
And I think you need that. Like, I think I just listened to a podcast interview with like Conan O'Brien, who's been doing a lot of interviews lately because he's doing a podcast too, which is good. You guys should check it out. But he was talking about how, and it ties in exactly with this conversation, where he was saying like, you can't really teach people to be funny. So it's like, there is this thing where like somebody, like there are some people who are born with like no sense of humor and like literally could not be comedians. Like they could study it, they could learn everything about it, and yet they just wouldn't be able to be comedians. But he was like saying that on top of that, like there's a mass amount of work. And so he was actually kind of, anyhow, he was saying it in kind of opposition to this idea that everybody who goes into comedy was the class clown. And he was saying, no, class clowns end up being the guy who like holds up a liquor store, you know, like the class clown is not always the guy who ends up being a professional comedian. You know, he's like, professional comedians are kind of weird individual people who like really sit down and do the hard work of like crafting really good comedy.
Right.
And a lot of that's just work. And so I think like if you look at, I think actually Conan O'Brien's a really good example of that, because it's like if you look at that guy's career, he worked his butt off. Like I don't think anyone could go up to that guy and be like, you're really lucky that you're funny, you know?
Right.
Because it's like, this is a guy who like literally hustled and worked and like spends every free minute doing comedy, even now when he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing to take away from this is just, you know, whenever you catch yourself with a moment of saying, I can't, ask yourself, is this like, you know, like a good question to ask is like, look at somebody like Chuck Close, who ended up in a massive car accident and figured out a way to paint, even though he couldn't use his hands, you know? Like, look at all these people like Christopher Reeves, right? Who like was told he couldn't walk and figured out a way to walk. So a good question to ask yourself is like, are you saying you can't because you're throwing in the towel and this is it? Or are you saying you can't because you like literally can't? Like, for instance, maybe you're blind and you can't see, and you're like, well, you literally can't see.
Right.
You know, but then again, like, what are you saying you can't do? Are you saying you can't see, or are you saying you can't learn to read Braille? You know?
And I have an example on the flip side. So you said something that I think is really interesting, that there's some value in setting these, what in the business world are called BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? They're so big that they're almost unachievable. but you work as hard as you possibly can to get there. On the other end of that, I have spent a significant portion of my adult life setting very manageable and achievable goals to my detriment. I think I have done that because of my fear of failure. I think when I hear myself saying things like, I'm not doing this for, I don't necessarily think that this book is going to be wildly successful. What I'm actually doing is I'm trying to mitigate the risk. I'm trying to take the vulnerability out of that situation so that I can't get hurt. And what I end up doing when I do that is I make the achievable goal so easy and such low-hanging fruit that when I achieve it, it's like, well, it's kind of just a given, right? And so actually in the last 3 to 5 years, I've really made an effort to stop doing that. And I've really seen my life kind of take off to where I've stopped saying, I'm gonna set my goals at the jobs that I can get, the clients that I can get, the things that I'm able to produce. And now I'm just like, I don't know how to do that thing, but I'm confident that I can figure it out given enough time and effort. And so I'm going to jump in and do it, and that has drastically changed my life. And I'm still working on it. It's still a battle in my mind between these big, crazy, outlandish goals that if you never reach that crazy, outlandish goal, you're still going to get light years ahead of where you would if you set an achievable goal. If you're just like, I can obviously get that. It's short-sighted. It's easy. I can achieve that, and then I can feel good about myself. But if you're like, there's this crazy thing that if I shoot for this insanely golden ring and miss it, you're still way better off than the easy, low-hanging fruit.
So this is like a weird thing that I've had for a while with art, and then I've lost touch with at different points in my life, and I've regained again. But it's like this thing. I remember when I was an undergrad in school, I was one of the first people to start making a living as an illustrator in my class. And I had a lot of classmates who would just be like talking to me as if I was like the weirdest, most amazing person because I had gotten a paid job doing art.
Right.
And I remember like even when I was applying for the Xeric, and this was around the same time. So I was like starting to get paid work, and I was shooting for this grant, and I was like fairly confident that I was going to get it, which was really weird. And I remember talking to this person at the time who was just kind of confused about my personality, and I was trying to explain because I had just achieved a big goal and I wasn't really satisfied. And they were like, well, why not? I mean, like, you aimed to get this thing done. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, to me, that's a rung in a ladder. And there's a massive gap between that rung being achieved and that ladder being climbed. Like, and literally when I get to the top of that, there will be another, like, that's just kind of my personality. And so, a perfect example of like where I'd like to be, like what I'm going to, like, I should probably verbalize this stuff more, but with quarterly stories, like my goal is, even if I don't get like a big publisher with it, I'm going to submit it for the Eisners. I'm going to submit it for the Harvey. I'm going to submit it to Best American Comics. I'm going to try to get in those things. And I'm visualizing that it might actually happen. Sure. Now, am I going to use like some secret mentality to it? No. And part of why I hold those cards to my chest is like, I don't know if realistically those things are going to happen, but those are all part of kind of where I'd like to go with it.
I think being satisfied is the death of progress. I think as soon as you're like, I'm happy with where I'm at right now. And I'm not talking about being happy with your life or feeling happiness. I'm talking about saying, I've achieved what I want to achieve and I'm satisfied with where I am. That's where you plateau and you don't get any better.
Yeah, and I think that to me, just professionally, professional satisfaction and personal satisfaction are like two different things, you know.
Right.
Like for me, if you get to that point, I hope it's because it was like this crazy success that's untoppable,
Yeah.
you know. But to me, it's like I haven't seen that, and um, I don't want to lose sight of that big goal, which is like, you know, it's a silly goal, but it's like it's been a goal since I've done comics, you know, to like make something that makes an impact. And you know, that's not like my objective. My overall objective is just make a good story that hopefully people enjoy. But when I'm doing this, I do have to keep that long vision and be like, am I making the best possible thing I can make, so that when it comes time to like do these things, like convention it, so that I'm like basically at conventions, like hopefully building a little groundswell for this like book and trying to get people to buy something that they otherwise may not buy. And it's not even fun to talk about with people half the time, because it's like a weird, you know, tough, difficult subject matter. If I'm going to invest time into that, I got to keep that long-term goal, because if I'm not getting closer to those longer-term goals, then what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, and to me, like, that's the thing, is like, you know, one rung of the ladder is like in May finishing this book, but that's just a rung. Like, and I think that for a lot of people, that's the ladder. And I think that's a shame, because I think the ladder should be taller than that. It should be like, when my book's done, what do I do with my book? You know, am I going to be making the book that I should be making? Like, am I making the art that I should be making? So, I don't know. That's kind of some thoughts on it, but it's like, I think that it's helpful you need those rungs on a ladder to get to the top of the ladder, because at the end of the day, if you try to just jump over the rungs, like you might have a failure you can't get back from, you know?
Yeah.
But so you need those little signposts along the way. But it's like, I'd hate to see everybody sign up for a marathon and then quit when they're like a halfway through and be like, I did a half marathon.
Right.
You know, that's just kind of a bummer. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It got me thinking of this, and I'm thinking of Scott specifically when I think of this. I've been trying to formulate this concept in my mind for a couple weeks, and so I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but I've seen kind of two types of people when it comes to obstacles. And it's kind of this idea that I've been talking about on my channel a little bit, where it's initiative in the face of ambiguity, right? Where there's not a clear path, there's not a, you know, whatever. What do you do in that situation? And I've seen people do this. There's a very clear path to start most things. It's really easy to be a beginner if you're willing to look foolish and fail often. There's, you know, you start. Like, I don't know, what am I going to do? Well, I need to figure out the tools. I need to figure out some of the mechanics. That part's really easy. After you get past that part, it becomes really ambiguous. What do you do with this? Right? And many people get to the ambiguity of that situation and they freeze because there's no clear path. But what you actually need to do is, when you climb that staircase and you get to the top of that staircase, you need to look around you and you need to build your own staircase. And you're going to build it wrong. But even in building it wrong, it's going to get you a little bit higher. And then you're going to learn some stuff. And the next few steps that you build are going to be a little bit better, but maybe in the wrong direction. But you're still going to be slightly higher. And then the people that are able to, instead of just standing on the top of the already built staircase, use the materials around them and break down the things that they built wrong and use that material to build it right or make it better. And they're just continually building this thing as they go higher and higher and higher. Those types of people will always be successful by almost any measure of success, because they just don't stop. There's just failure by that definition is just when you stop building out of that ambiguity. And one of the interesting things I've seen with Scott, especially recently, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Scott, is there's a very clear path. You had a day job, you had some side hustles going on, you know, the day job isn't there anymore. You reach the top of that kind of built ladder, and instead of going, oh, woe is me, this is terrible, this is so hard, I don't know what I'm going to do, and you wring your hands, it was like you didn't even break a stride, and you just started building things around you, and you just started like, okay, I'm going to build up my email list, and I'm gonna make this big comic starter pack, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. It was like you didn't lose any momentum. You were climbing those steps, just step, 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 step. That staircase ended. You didn't stop stepping. You just kept building and building and building. Yeah. I'm curious, Scott. Is that something that came naturally to you? Was that a decision that you made? Was there a point in time where you had to maintain a certain level of monitoring of your self-talk, or how did you maintain that momentum in that transition period to where you're just building your own staircase in the face of this new ambiguity, this kind of curveball that got thrown?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I was always, I mean, these are things I was always in the process of building, you know, whether it's starter kit or the mailing list and all this stuff. And then, you know, when I got laid off, it's like, my problem before was I didn't have time, you know. Now I've got time, so why not jump into it, you know? And in the meantime, you know, if I see a full-time job that looks like it might be decent, I'll send something out. I'm doing some freelance here or there, but it doesn't make any sense just to dwell on that situation. I mean, just you got to kind of move forward. And I'm not in dire straits now. I mean, if this continues to go and things aren't, you know, moving, then I may be, and things may change. I might get a little desperate, but right now, you know, just kind of do what I can. But the main thing I want to focus on is all the things that I didn't really have the time for. So that's part of it. And I mean, if this is where, you know, this is kind of where I wanted to be, but I wanted to be further along, you know, before I would be at a point where I could quit the day job. Then that kind of, you know, that decision was kind of made for me. Now I'm still probably not at where I need to be to kind of, and I can live pretty spartanly, but there's, you know, there's other circumstances that, you know, I got kids and stuff like that. If it was just me, that wouldn't be a problem. I would just probably continue to go the direction I am. That plus, you know, insurance, you know, that's one of the benefits to having a full-time job is the insurance, and that's, you know, that's pricey too. So I mean, those two things are the biggest thing that I think would hold me back. But if it wasn't, you know, if it kind of wasn't for that, then I would just kind of I would just continue to keep down this road without any hesitation. But you know, right now this is, you know, again, it's like I've got the time to work on this, so this is all the stuff, and I'm gonna get further along. And if it ends up where I have to take another full-time job or whatever, I'm gonna be further along on what I really want to do. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question? Or
yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, I think like, to, you know, we mention this book all the time, but like one of the best things that book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, really, the best analogies that I think should always be on the mind of creators is the fact that this thing is a war. Like, to make a living being a creative is a fight, and it's a fight that unfortunately, you know, is probably going to happen until we're dead, you know, like all of us. And part of that means like work that's flowing is going to change, industries are going to change, you know, trends are going to change. You know, we're on YouTube right now. Maybe this platform will disappear. You know, and one of the things that's beautiful when you keep at it and you keep fighting this thing is you end up being a little bit like a veteran in a ring. Meaning like, you know, there's a lot of people, maybe like cocky kids who are like, probably imagine themselves to be really good boxers, and they train in the gym and they do all the work, and it's all good because they have this vision of just killing it in the ring. there's a really slight few who, after getting knocked out, go back.
Right.
And I've known people who've like gone into, like literally gone into boxing, you know, like amateur boxing. And they're like, this is really fun. And they won a few bouts and they loved it. And then they got beat the crap out of, and they were like, this is not something I ever want to do again. It's nothing I'd want to do. But my point being, like, this is the ring that we're in. Like,
yeah,
this is our little sparring area. And it's one of those things of like, man, you know, like, comics will break your heart. I swear to it. It's already broken mine. I mean, I had a publishing deal that just dropped, and it literally broke my heart. I spent 4 years on a book that I finished, and the publisher dropped it the day I finished it. And it's like, so the guy was giving me editorial feedback and stuff. So I had this vision of this book on bookshelves because they had distribution. So I was like, this is going to be in Barnes and Noble. This is going to be here. And I wasn't foolish for thinking it because I had a publisher.
Right.
I had a contract. And so like that kind of thing is going to happen all the time throughout your whole art career. Just these opportunities that come up and then maybe disappoint you and go away. And really, the weird thing is the more of those you compile, it's like you develop this kind of ability to like do, like, I don't know if I've developed it as well as Scott has, but to basically, you know, you start seeing fires as opportunities. Because like the thing is, there's two ways you can go about it. You can either like basically stop and freak out, or you can look at your options and like look at the opportunities that have presented themselves. Like Scott was just mentioning, like he has these projects that were started that were just being stagnated by the workday. So the second that's gone, like why not? Why not get them out?
Yeah.
Why not kind of like use that time to kind of like maximize every possibility, because it's a war. So it's like, hey, we lost that ground, but there's an opening here. Like you have to kind of like, at least I think like I have to always be looking for like new plots of land that I can take in this little war, because if I'm not gaining ground, then I'm losing ground or I'm stagnant, which is like death in a war. So that's, to me, it's like, I think if, I think that's the main reason to kind of have that mindset, tying it back to the mindset thing, where it's like, you know, if you're in a growth mindset, you're always progressing, you know, and failure is not like the biggest setback in the world. It's part of the process, you know. Like one of my favorite kids book illustrators in the NCS, like, was like a Disney guy and woke up and he was really successful at it, and woke up one day and was like, I hate working for Disney. And so he became a really well-known kids book illustrator, just dropped everything. And, you know, like you're not going to meet a creative who didn't take a risk and didn't have a failure, you know? And if you do, chances are like you'll see what they're made of when you see them face failure, you know? So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. To me, it's fascinating. It keeps it interesting. It keeps us growing as creatives. And I like, once again, it's a war. So like for me, half of it's just keeping my mindset right, you know, where it's like kind of seeing what I can kind of move forward, how I can get closer to whatever the crazy thing is I want to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we should call it. We've been going for over an hour. The chat's been awesome. Appreciate all the new people in the chat and all our tried and true army that show up frequently. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell on my channel. Jump onto Josh's channel and do that as well. And Scott, where can we find your work?
Yeah, you can find me at circworks.com, and if you go there, get the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's free. You just join the mailing list, and the mailing list has a lot of value too. Like there's exclusive video content. I just sent out the first newsletter today, and there's an exclusive video that only people on the mailing list are going to get. There's like little tips and art hacks, and then there's like discounts and stuff for my store and everything. So it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can go to quarterlystories.com, or right now I'm really trying to get to a certain subscriber count on Tapas, and I'm close. So you guys can help that happen. So go to tapas.io and look for Quarterly Stories and add it to your library there. It does a huge amount of help in kind of growing and getting me closer to kind of that crazy, the first rung on that ladder of where I'm hoping to take this thing. So,
yeah, that's great.
I wish I could subscribe twice, but.
And you can find my stuff at corykerr.com. I will be launching a 20-day project here where I'm going to go through the process of animation. And so you're on my channel right now if you're watching this on YouTube, and go to corykerr.com/videos, and you can see my YouTube channel there if you're listening to this on the podcast. I also have a podcast that I've released for Illo Talk. And this podcast is available at corykerr.com/48hr. And if you guys take a moment and leave us a 5-star review on that podcast, even if you're watching this video live now, or if you're listening to it later in the audio version of this, that is super, super helpful, and we really appreciate that. Thanks for joining us in the chat. We'll go live again on Wednesday. We go Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 p.m. California time. We alternate between Josh's channel and my channel. If you subscribe to both of those, you'll get notifications. And thanks, everybody, and we will see you guys in 48 hours.
Bye.